All right. Hey guys, how you doing? My name is Lyle. I'm from That Viral Moment, where we are on a mission to empower the next generation of content creators. And today I have with me the amazing Zach from EnchantedMob, the incredible channel that has figured out how to capitalize on Minecraft animation, as well as music videos and short films to grow a really large following. How you doing, Zach?
Good, good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're super glad to have you. Um, so you guys have been on the in the YouTube scene for 6 years, right?
Yeah. I guess in total it would have been 6 years.
Yeah, and that's it's super cool because YouTube's changed a lot in that entire span. But I guess before we give a little of a brief intro about you, just kind of your background and you work with your brother Seth on this channel, right?
Right. Yeah. Seth originally started the channel, I think, in 2014, and he was just he wasn't even in high school yet. Actually, he was like in eighth grade or seventh grade even, and he was just using it for fun, just uploading videos that him and his friends thought were funny. But then he started to get more serious about it and started to have a little bit of success, and then I started to work with him from there, and that was more 2015. Since then.
Gotcha. And what were you doing before then? And did your interests with Seth align? Like, he's has he always been good at animation? And did you ever have an interest in animation?
Well, he started using a program called Pivot, which is a 2D stick figure kind of animation software. Very very early, very beta, but you can make some cool stuff if you're like a 13-year-old, and that's what he used it
Mm-hmm.
for. And I used to use that too, actually, back in the day. But so he's been doing stuff on and off like that since 2011. Um, but no, I'm not like personally like I have an eye for writing, and I have an idea of I know what looks good on the screen, but my abilities are better served toward different parts of the business. Um, really just on the business side, and he's more the creative side. I kind of think of it as a 70-30. He does 70% of the creative work and 30% of the business. I do 70% of the business, 30% of the creative work. So it is a give and a take, but it's not 50-50 either. It's actually similar, and not to compare myself, I'm not to like Roy Disney and Walt Disney, but that's how their relationship was. They were both brothers. Roy was the business person, and Walt was obviously the creative type.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And looking back, as kids, could you ever imagine being in a full-time business with Seth? Like, have you always had an interest, or have either of you been interested in entrepreneurship? Because, I took a look at your first video from 6 years ago, and you guys started off with these really short 20-second clips. And I assume animation was just Seth at the time. So it was probably a hobby or a pastime. But, the thought of growing to being full-time, having a business, you guys have a team of people working for you. There's many more animators than just Seth. Looking back 6 years ago, would you have ever thought you would get to that point and it would be something like that?
You know, um, I never would have thought it was impossible. You know, like I personally was like, I think this is true for everyone. It all just comes down to applying yourself. Like Seth was not if you've seen those old videos, Seth was not very good when he made those,
Man,
right?
compared to me, I'd say night and
Well,
day. Yeah.
still though, like it wasn't very good. He got a lot better through a lot of just practice and work over a long period of time. When a lot of other people were going out and um, you know having fun with their friends on the weekend, it's not to say that he didn't ever do that, but he was typically just went home and would put off doing his homework and animate all day long, all night, and then go and only get 6 hours of sleep and barely do his studies and then go back. He always got B's and things like that, but it's just a matter of if you apply yourself. And so what I was trying to say was whenever the first thing I could think of that I did was when I was a gymnast when I was younger. I wasn't the best. I obviously didn't go on to be an Olympian, but I was pretty good for the effort I put in. I worked hard at it and I got better and I surprised people. The same thing was true for my wrestling and pole vaulting experience. And the same thing was true, particularly for me personally in academics, where I very much assume that you and anyone watching this is probably smarter than me in terms of IQ. But you know, things don't come super easily to me. But what will happen is I was the kid that did go and study every single night, a ridiculous amount of hours, and I would beat the kids that were smarter than me. And that
Mm.
happened just throughout my, um, I graduated third in my class in high school, high honors in college. It wasn't because I was smarter than anyone else. At least that's not how I felt about it. It truly felt like just by applying myself and doing the same thing to YouTube is the same thing. It's all about persistence.
Oh, I can't tell you how much I love that answer. First of all, I think you have a great IQ, so I wouldn't even question that. But it's funny because people talk about this concept of you could take someone who's extremely talented, like maybe genetically, for an athlete, right? They just have a great body, certain height, great genes, and then you could take someone who maybe doesn't have the same starting point, but through tireless training and effort and dedication and just being um, driven and passionate about the craft, that person will over time likely exceed the person who's just kind of, you know, good on a more just out of, default, your default ability to
Yeah,
do something.
that's so true because I watched this. There's a lot of famous directors out there in the world, and what I was interested in is how did the kids of successful directors do? Because they have access to these amazing directors. It's their father or mother or something like that. You would think that they would just be killing it from the time that they're, since they could talk at storytelling. But I watched some of the short films of like the kids of famous directors, and maybe they were just young or they're still learning. They didn't impress me. Not to say that I could do better. I'm just saying, like, I just, even like you're saying, they might not have worked that hard. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I was going to say there's something, I think as a child, it becomes very easy to compare yourself to others and say, wow, like, look at this person, look at his family, his upbringing, et cetera, and compare it to your own. But I think that there's so much value in potentially starting out with less in terms of the amount of that, what that places in terms of your drive and your just ambition to go out and do. And so I think that, but it's important to find something that you care about at the end of the day. Like, talking about YouTube, if Seth never cared about animation, Enchanted Mob probably would have had a few videos and then it just would have stopped, because ultimately, it's very clear that you not only have to be consistent at what you're interested in, and keep applying and trying, but there does have to be just this innate love for the craft, and I'm sure that that's been a big contributor to, the success of your channel over its lifespan. Our channel's called That Viral Moment, and I haven't said this, but it's kind of counterintuitive in the sense that we work with, we like to interview channels that it's not necessarily about having one video that blew up, but it's about a consistent, sustained level of performance and just dedication and consistency. And I think that that's really what to focus on, because we could all make a trendy video, or someone could have shared it on Reddit and it got 1,000 upvotes, but it's what do you do after that? What do you do
Yeah.
once you're given that opportunity? And
Right.
so on the note of burnout, I guess I'm curious, have Seth, like, have you guys experienced that? Because that's one of the challenges of starting any type of channel is you have to keep going, and you have life, right? You guys had school, you have a family, there's other things that go on. So if you don't stay consistent, you're not going to see the results that you want.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. It's, you know, so it also depends. Like Seth and the team that work with us, they're all artists, and it's a different. And I've worked for people before. I worked even throughout during Enchanted Mob's time. I worked at a library at the campus I went to, just because I wanted to have normal employment experiences too. And I just thought that, I didn't need to do it, but I don't know, I did it, and it. Those bosses, they were super burnt out. And like, even though they loved books and maps and the things that they dealt with, they just, when you're doing it for 20 years, they didn't care anymore. And so I think part of it is, at least when you're an artist, things can be dynamic and changing because you have the ability to change them to what you want them to be. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the business will win in terms of if Seth wanted to go and do these projects that just weren't doing well and they were hurting our bottom line and not taking us in a good direction. At some point, I'm going to have to say, we can't keep doing this.
Right.
You can do this on your own time, but you need to focus on things that are artistically well made, but also commercially viable at the same time. And that is a trade-off. And we're in a different situation than a lot of other channels, just because we only work with artists. And I don't know if you've had the
Hmm.
privilege of working with artists, but sometimes they can be, they won't, like, you're paying them, right? You're,
Hmm.
and not even that they're happy with the pay you're giving them, but they don't
Right.
want to do it because they don't feel like it. And it's just, and motivation for artists to do their job is very, very high. It's a very big part of it.
I was going to say something that can be a challenge, right? You think about a YouTube channel, you think about any social channel, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, anything that you're doing full time. Um, yes, it's content and it's different than a 9 to 5 job, but it is a job, it is a business. And something that's so crucial as you scale is as you grow your team and you get more people involved culturally. What does that look like? Building a culture, building an environment where everyone feels a sense of community and they feel a sense of getting towards one goal. For example, if someone starts a company, for example, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, not to call anyone out, right? But to say that someone who is the CEO and founded this huge organization, to say me, if I start a new job at Amazon and I'm delivering packages to people's homes, how do you get me to have that same level of passion that the people who have maybe more at stake do? And
Yeah.
I'm curious. It kind of seems to resonate with the message you're saying, in the sense that it's like, look, as your team grows and expands, you have to find new ways to incentivize people to continue delivering the same way you would if you were in the same position.
Yeah, and having mainly been building a studio of artists, it's a different type of business than like a delivery driver might
Right.
be for Amazon.
Hmm.
Um, but in our case, it's like, people take pride in their work, and I'm sure like a delivery man. It's interesting too. The United States' culture is different on this, but you talk to people, and I, because we work with a lot of international people, and
Right.
I haven't ever met someone from Switzerland, but something I've heard, people that know of Swiss people, the Swiss, they take huge pride in their work. Whether it's the garbage man, he wants to
Yeah.
come and pick up his trash at a certain time. The trains are always on time in Switzerland because the conductor, like, it's a big point of pride that it's on time every day.
Hmm.
And it's like, we don't have that kind of, if the Amtrak's behind, it's like, that's what you expect
Yeah.
in the United States. It's a different mentality, but I think that's great. And with artists, it lends itself because they do take a lot of pride in their work. You just have to try to make sure to steer them in the right direction and get them motivated for a particular project. But if you're able to do that, you can be pretty successful.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, intrinsic motivation, right? And I think it's important for people to feel acknowledged, noticed, appreciated, to also be given the opportunity to have a voice. So, here's a question. Let's say you hire an animator to work on a film and they have an idea for a totally different concept. Do you, welcome that? Have you had ideas from these animators? Have they ever contributed in ways that were not as planned originally, just based on the fact that they had more ideas and more passion outside of the specific assignment that they were tasked with?
Yeah, it definitely has happened. And so, sort of what we realized that not to get like too technical, but
Hmm.
basically what we do to make our projects is, so say it's a 3.5 minute video. We write a script. We have a couple people write it. Then we have a director who will actually go in and do the layout. And if you know anything about layout, it's essentially just the very basic dimensions of a room, the characters there, and so
Hmm.
then to go from point A to point B by 200 frames. You drag them over there, and then maybe we'll provide references for, we want them to walk in a certain way, or we want them to behave or wave or say something, and we will give those explanations. Then we pass it on to an animator. Sometimes they're online, sometimes they work here in our office. It varies. But then those animators will take those notes and animate that, and then we will critique it. They'll send maybe a blocking pass that's before it's all smooth, but it'd be like this, but it tries to get the idea down. Then we would critique that. And then if it's getting close, but still not quite right, then you critique it again. Unfortunately, at some point though, if it's not working, you might have to just throw it away. And then we've had people, and that's a hard thing to say to them, like, yeah, we know you did all this, you spent hours. It's not good enough. You have to start over. You have to throw it away. And sometimes we'll pay them for it. It depends on how much time they spent. But say it's not good enough. You need to do it again. And that's hard for people to hear. So then even when that happens, sometimes
Hmm.
it's still not good enough on the second attempt. And then at
Right.
that point, then at some time we have to be like, this is on YouTube. The business model is not perfect. Should we push them to make this, studio professional quality whenever the audience isn't going to really notice and they're watching it on a tiny little phone screen? Are they really going to be able to tell the difference? Typically, the answer is they probably won't be able to tell. But then again, their motivation to do this is all about artistic integrity themselves. So good enough doesn't sit well with them. So what they'll end up doing sometimes is just actually going into the file and tweaking it themselves. And it won't take a lot of time, but it's just the fact that then they can sleep easier at night knowing that it is as good as it could have been.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me about your, I guess, the business model in general for a second, taking a step back. So where did the name Enchanted Mob come from? And for those who are watching this that actually haven't interacted with your channel before, how would you describe the process, from, I mean, obviously you work with people who either write songs or who, there's a lot of, I guess, collaboration involved before a video goes live. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about the technicality, the behind the scenes of Enchanted Mob.
So yeah, so you want me to talk about the music side of it mainly, not the animation side for a second? I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, more generals in terms of, if you were to think of all the pieces that go into a video.
Okay. Yeah. So a video starts with, in our case, any YouTuber that's just going to start on a small scale, they're just going to pick a certain thing that they want to do, and they will sort of develop the process for themselves, the workflow, as we would call it. What we do, what works for us, it actually is very similar in a lot of ways to what like a big studio, you name them, whether it's a production company that's selling like Animal Logic that sells their films, such as like the Lego movies or the Batman Lego movies, things like that. The Ninjago movies sells them to Warner Bros. Or whether it's an in-house company like Disney or Pixar, Blue Sky, or any of those. What they do, essentially, it's a similar process. We all make 3D animation. Theirs is more complex, but it's the same steps. They have more steps, but it's similar. So what we do is the first thing is you pick out what you want to do, and you do that based on market research. You do that based on what's trending at the time, what you think will do, well, what you want to do. There's no formula to that. It's just whatever makes sense at the time, you pick that. Okay. So that's great. So for this last project we just released today, that one, they really wanted to make it about a particularly iconic character on our channel that we haven't used in almost 3 years. And some of the people wanted to do that and said, well, that's fine, but there isn't a song. So typically we'll just go out and license a song from a musician, and that can, there's typically 3 ways we do that. One can be some sort of a revenue split, whether it's 10%, 15%, 25% of the ad revenue earned from that video for X number of days, weeks, months, etc. Sometimes years. It really does vary. Sometimes it can be a licensing fee of, maybe we think 10 million views is worth about $1,000. So if the original song had 10 million views, we'll pay you $1,000. By 20, we'll pay you $2,000, something like that. And then the third one could be a combination of those, or you could also dual upload the project, which is something we've been experimenting with more recently. But the musician could have an upload, and you can have an upload, and then you each make money that way. In the way you think, like, well, you're giving it to different fans, you're creating more of a pie to share as opposed to them taking part of yours. But some musicians but then their artistic integrity comes through of like, well, I'm a musician, I'm not an animation channel, I don't want this on my channel. And then those kinds of things are also things to consider. And we've heard it all. We've worked with a lot of musicians over the years. But that's the music side. The other way is we can also commission music to be made, which is what we did on this last song. So we have someone in-house named Zach P. that he has a pretty good skill set, in my opinion, for making music. I mean, he's not certainly a professional mixer or anything yet, or an audio engineer, but he does a great job. And if you watch the video, the bass soundtrack, the bass melody, that came from his brain. And what we did then is we worked with another musician. His name's Igor. His YouTube channel is called Try Hard Ninja. And then we also then employed a singer who so it's a fun story, but she had actually sang the song on our channel, our second most popular video, like almost 4 years ago. Called Join Us for a Bite. And then we got her to come back and do another song after all these years. And maybe that might be part of why the video is doing so successful for the OG people that remember it. But this is a video with over 100 million views now, so it's well known for our channel. But so in this case, so then we just had to work with those musicians, and then you have a give and take of, okay, he can upload a lyric video, we can use it in the animation. He can make all the song sales. We helped pay for the part of the production of the music, but we get to use the song for free, things like that. And then from there, it's like, and that's a long-winded explanation, but so now you've got your song. Whether you license it or you have it made, you got it. It's like, okay. It's actually not that hard from there in terms of coming up with a story. If you're using loose inspiration from like an existing game property or something, you essentially have some framework, the same way like, I mean, even today, like with Frozen 2, a lot of people don't seem to know this, but the Frozen 2 characters are based on actual queens from like, I forget which country, some Nordic country, but that's like the Snow Queen is a real story, the same way Snow White was and Cinderella. They kind of draw inspiration from these folklore legend type stories, and we kind of do the same thing with video games. And anyway, but you kind of have a basic idea of a story, and then you take that and you say, well, what can we show in 3 minutes? Are we showing the whole story, showing part of the story? What are we changing? What are we kind of using more based on some sort of canon or lore?
Yep.
And then we write it, and then but once you write a script, then you take that script and you write a screenplay based on that, which that's just essentially breaking it down into all of the shots as far as you can describe them with words. Then you take it into if you have rigs made, sometimes ours are reused from previous projects. If not, you have to, it's a digital puppet. You have to have someone model it and put all the things so you can control it. And then you lay it out, which is that's just like, you call it a gray box. It's just like, if I wanted to, like I look at your screen, I see your room. It's like there's a window behind you, there's a microphone next to you, or maybe it's on this side, and then your headphones, and the way you look, it's like we would model all of that just with the basic dimensions. And then we will do layout, which is then we would take your person and sit him here so you can be in the interview. And then the animator will come in and actually have, all the nuances of your movement and, the way you move your eyebrows and the way you talk and all those things.
Yeah.
And then eventually the set modeler will come in, he'll model the set, texture it. Then you have something called final layout where you put the final set, the final rig together. Then you light it, which again, lighting is relatively straightforward. Then you obviously have to render it. We have a deal with the Chinese render farm, so we send it overseas to China and it comes back rendered in a fraction of the time is the idea of that. And then you composite it together. In our case, we use Adobe After Effects. That's what I would recommend if anyone wants to do any serious color grading.
Yeah.
But you can do some in Premiere as well, Adobe Premiere. And then you edit it and that's it.
And that's it. That sounded like one of the most complicated processes that I've ever heard. It sounds like you guys, like you said, you operate similar to any other animation studio. Have you guys ever been, reached out to by some of these large names like Pixar or whatnot? And just, out of curiosity, like, I don't know what that would look like in terms of like an acquisition or just a partnership. Like, have you guys ever had any relationships with these other names that are more well known?
I wish. No, not really. We've had some. We have a lot of brands that are interested in working with us. We haven't ever had a lot of interest. Now, some studios in like India talked to us one time, but even then they were more interested in. They were seeing. It was really interesting. They were wanting us to kind of like subcontract them to help us make our stuff, and they were like somewhat of a production company themselves. And their argument to me was interesting, just because it was essentially that we can essentially pay people less than you can in the United States, so you can save money. Is kind of what they were saying to me. But quality would probably suffer too at that point, and then the language barriers and. So
but I was going to say, like, do you guys have any plans? So you guys made this one video. It's like a family video. I don't really know. It's like the EnchantedMob family. And so you guys have music videos, you have these short films, but for the short films, have you guys ever thought about going into like a legit, similar to like a television type series where you have like the same characters? And I mean, I know you guys are one for, your community requests using similar characters in future videos and things like that. So have you guys ever thought about expanding into other avenues outside of purely music videos?
Absolutely. It's just a matter of it's not an exaggeration that we'll be in the office 12 hours a day, 13 hours a day. It's hard whenever you're already, for us, the YouTube game is quantity. So like if you were to post one interview like this once a month or maybe every 2 months, and they do well for what they are, how much better would you do if you got to post these every week, or let alone twice a week? It just exponentially more, and they all build off each other. YouTube is a quantity game. Animation specifically is not a quantity game. Pixar doesn't release a movie a month or something. It's like the way that TV shows can just have episode after episode after episode. Animation is not a quantity thing. And so putting it on YouTube has always been a struggle. It will always be a struggle. And quite frankly, I don't think YouTube really seems, not that they don't care, but I don't think they really care about animation on their platform. I mean, I hope they're not watching this, but I just really don't, that's just not their thing. They just want other things that upload more often.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on the quantity concept. I think it's very common for people to think that, you know, you need to post every day or every week or whatnot to be successful on YouTube, but you can't sacrifice quality. And so for you guys, yeah, sure, you could upload a 30-second animation much more often, probably than the type of content you make. But ultimately, there's kind of a few things. One is, you know, if I always say we go back to burnout, that we talked about burnout earlier. If you're going to upload 2 times a week and then burn out after 3 weeks and then you're done, it'd make more sense to upload once a week or once every other week and sustain that for years. Because if you think about the quantity of sustaining that for years will add up to be greater than that small portion of time that you were uploading consistently. So I think it's important to also think about longevity of the channel and making sure that you as a content creator are not just rushing and pressured into making videos, because then ultimately you wake up and you're like, Seth, man, we got to make a video, like it needs to go live tomorrow, and then it takes away the I guess the flame and just like the, you know, the entire authenticity of the content itself.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people focus on content to satisfy the YouTube algorithm, which, don't get me wrong, there is an importance for that. But I think, you know, you know, you're right in that it's important for you guys to not sacrifice your quality just to save money, you know, outsourcing it to India or whatnot. And it's important to focus on, again, you know, what I think you said, it's like, is it artist integrity or something like
Artistic
that?
integrity, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I know I didn't quite answer your question too. We are actually developing a sort of more like a TV show
Yeah.
sort of thing. So for one of our other channels that we operate, it's got about 600,000 subscribers. It's called 3 Display. It makes similar content. It's all animated, but they're gonna be 8-minute episodes where it's just about a certain group of characters kind of in a specific location. And
Yep.
we essentially realized all those steps I told you about, you can cut out about 2/3 of them if you just have reusing the same sets, reusing the same characters, more like a TV show. And then very importantly, it's going to be 8 minutes per episode. And as you know, that's the mark that then now you can have more than one ad per project.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another problem with animation on YouTube, is just it lends itself to be short form content, and short
Yep.
form content does the worst on
Yep.
YouTube. So
I'm a music channel. So, well, on the side, I have a music channel on YouTube, and I totally realize, like, you know, a beat that I'm going to make is like 3 to 5 minutes. You know, I'm not going to make a 16-minute song that's just a replay of the song 5 times just to
yeah.
satisfy length, right? Because again, you have to focus on that quality and what
Now,
makes sense. So,
can I tell you though what you should do?
yeah,
Here's what you do. You make that song on your main channel, then you have a second channel. And on your second channel, then you post the 1 hour version or the reverse of the song, the nightcore version, which is the higher pitch. Like, we recently started doing this on one of our second channels. It is the dumbest thing we've ever done, but it is making so much money that it's such a joke. It's like, I'm not even kidding. We just realized we make a video and there's a bunch of people, there's like a whole community of people that take our stuff and rip it off and monetize it in different ways. We're like,
yeah,
let's just do what they're doing
yeah,
to our own stuff. So I'm not kidding. One of them is you have the full video, you click in the timeline in Premiere and you just click the reverse button and you just upload the reverse. There's absolutely no reason to watch that. They get hundreds of thousands of views and we make good money off of just clicking. It takes me like literally 1 second and you make hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands of dollars off of that. And there's a lot of stuff like that. Spanish version, like you name it.
So
reactions, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, even for like an interview podcast channel, right? Like you could create a separate channel that's just highlight clips. In fact, that's something I'm interested in doing.
H3 does that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Rogan, I think.
Joe Rogan. Yeah, because ultimately, you know, there's going to be people who are in the EnchantedMob community that want to watch this entire interview. But there's also going to be a segment of people that are like, I really just want to hear the specific pieces of advice that I get from this specific content creator, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So I guess I'm also curious, you mentioned these channels that you own, or that you operate. Could you talk to me a little bit about that? You know, about the process of, you know, how many channels do you guys own? And is this a common thing? Is it common for a popular YouTube channel to kind of build more of a conglomerate type of model where they own other channels?
Typically, no. As far as I know, like there are exceptions. Like one content creator I can think of, we work with him. His name's Jordan Marin. His channel is called Captain Sparkles. He has like 7 So what his belief is, and maybe being an ex-Google person, you could confirm or deny this, but he thinks that he has a channel for most of like Minecraft gaming. He has a Fortnite channel. He has a blog channel. He has a music channel, and others. A second channel, like there's others that I'm not even being able to come up with off the top of my head. He does that because he thinks people subscribe for a certain thing, and I want to just give them that on those specific channels. There's definitely some logic to that. I don't know that you need that many, but that's what he does.
Well, yeah, I think it's important. You can't have too many channels because then you're not going to be consistent at any of them, right? So,
right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, in terms of like operating these channels, do you outsource? So you mentioned one other channel that has a decent following as well, and obviously it's important to be granular because you don't want to post the content from one channel that's completely different on EnchantedMob. It might just not resonate the same way. So how do you manage all of those channels at once?
Yeah, so here's the way it is. So EnchantedMob has 2 million subscribers, 700 million views roughly. We started it years ago. Then we have a second channel. It's so small, it's not even worth mentioning. I honestly couldn't even make 25,000 subscribers or something. And our dad used to call Seth Enchanted Slob, so that's why it's called Enchanted Slob. But then we also have a third channel, which is, like I said, it's called 3A Display, which essentially we had some more or less super fans a couple of years ago that kind of wanted to be involved working with us, but they weren't essentially at the high enough quality level that we could have them work on our projects and kind of pay them. So we said, well, how about we start a new channel with you, we'll operate it with you, maybe partner with you 50-50 or what, some sort of thing like that. And then they will make the videos, but we will provide them with expertise, with music rights, with rigs, assets, and other digital things we've created, as well as then, by the way, just so we are, and you tell them, if there's a long-term future and you help build the company up, obviously that will benefit you as well. If I'm a millionaire someday, I'm sure you'll be making a lot of money too. And there's other channels too. Another one's Examination, where we're just partners with them. So that's kind of a new strategy too. We're not trying to come in and, even with EnchantedMob, it's like, as much as I might be like the CEO or the boss, I don't really exercise that authority. Typically, I'll just kind of say, here's what I think we should do. But ultimately, it's more up to the artist to actually execute the vision anyway. So I can't really force them to do anything. If they all disagree with me, what am I going to do? So it's like, I kind of just feel like an advisor. And in a lot of ways, that's what I am on a lot of things, particularly with the artistic side. And so with these partner channels, we do the same thing. And so that's another one. Then there's Examination too. That's the second channel I was talking about.
Right.
And
they're all in a similar category to an extent, right? Like
and there's another one too called Animation Sims, which we've actually stopped doing because it just had a gimmick of, if you ever heard of Cinema Sins, where they would just run through and criticize movies with like, this is wrong, ding, this is wrong, ding. Well, they had the idea of, there was a bunch of crappy parodies of their work being done. They just wanted to make Animation Sins and kind of make fun of the people that were imitating them so much. And I guess that was kind of controversial. People don't like being criticized. But ultimately, the reason we stopped was because the formula just was stale and new people weren't coming, less people were watching. It was going down and down and down and down and down. And therefore, the channel exists, but we don't use it.
Yeah, and it's important to make those pivots, right? I feel like they say you have to take risks in any type of personal venture. It's important to try different things because you never know what's going to work. But also, if something doesn't work, there's no issue. You take what you learn from it and then you reinforce the projects or the things that are working. One thing I'm curious about, so you mentioned this video, you had a video that premiered probably like 5 hours ago. It's already at 200,000 something views. And, one thing I've noticed is there are YouTubers where I would say a good goal is, and just based on some stats, someone gets a subscriber on average every 100 to 150 views. And then it's typical for a channel to produce about 10% of its views based on its subscriber numbers. So if you have 1,000 subscribers, on average, your videos would get 100 views. And so if you can maintain that ratio, that's great. But I guess I'm curious, just in terms of, you launch a video, it explodes. What are some of the marketing strategies you guys employ when you're officially, or when you first launch a video? Like, how do you hype it up to get that much engagement? And what are your recommendations for people listening out here who might be artists, or they might be in similar channels, or they might be doing something totally different, but they just are not able to get that engagement, even from subscribers that they have that just aren't watching their content anymore?
Well, um, so I guess it kind of comes down to the idea of you have hero content on your channel. So once you have any success at all, and even if it's your videos are getting 50,000 views in a month or 100,000 views in 2 months or something like that, that's something. It's not like crazy. You're not, getting a yacht or anything, but you're making a little bit of money. It's like once you have a little bit of success like that, you can kind of start to nail down what works on your channel, the way you do it, what doesn't. Focus on the stuff that does, make a second channel for the stuff that doesn't if you want to keep making it at all. And that's kind of the first thing. Now, beyond that, like one of the most successful content creators on the platform is called Mr. Beast. Have you
Yep.
heard of? So, so,
Absolutely.
so Mr. Beast's whole strategy, and I was at VidCon last summer, and I heard Matthew Patrick, the game theory guy,
Mhm.
talk about this. He was saying essentially that Mr. Beast starts his creative process with the thumbnail. What the video is about, he starts with just the thumbnail. And so it's like if it's guys have to stand in a circle for 12 hours or whatever crazy concept, that's what he does. And so he makes them as clickable as possible, as interesting as possible, and then he just constructs a video around that. And they are kind of clickbait a lot of the time. I don't necessarily endorse clickbait, but it works for a reason. People
Yeah.
click on it.
Well, yeah. Oh, sorry. I was going to say
Well,
click through
and
rate's important. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, and another thing too, but for us in particular, having highly saturated thumbnails is important. Just the more color you can pack into it, the better. If just the video of you was going to be the thumbnail, and obviously you would do more to it. But if nothing else, take it into Photoshop and saturate it or brighten it. Like just brighter thumbnails will stand out from the list. And for us in particular, why? So the question is, why is it doing as well as it is? Well, the reason is probably because 90% of our views come from recommended. So that means 10% of our subscribers are who typically are giving us the views that we get. And it's frustrating, but it's just something to understand that most of the views really do come from just a kid scrolling on his phone and says, oh, that looks nice. And he clicks on it. And it's that simple. There's not like, so it's like you just need to be the one that he does click on or she does click on. Interestingly enough, our audience is about 50-50 male, female. Typically YouTube scales toward men on a lot of channels, especially in the gaming area, but ours is 50-50, if you want to know that.
Yeah, no, and it's awesome that you know these demographics of your channel as well. I guess, I could imagine the people listening to this wanting to ask you, like, Zach, what are you guys doing anything for self-promotion or when you guys, launch a video, right? You got things like the community tab. You might have other social media platforms. I don't know if you use Instagram. I don't know. You also have a website. So there are, ways to get in touch with your audience and not just rely on YouTube pushing to them, right? Because ultimately that can be, you can never be guaranteed. So it's like, what else would you say you are doing or you could be doing to make sure people watch your video when it comes out?
Yeah. So in our case, we're more of we have like a corporate brand look to our channel. We're not personality. Like for a lot of people that see this video, this very well might have been the first time they've ever heard me speak, the first time they've ever seen me form an opinion about me. They don't even know of me necessarily. They might see my name in the video, but that's about it. We're not a personality channel. So I can't, and that makes it difficult for brand deals sometimes, because if I tweet out that, L'Oreal has a great new hair product, I don't think anyone's going to care the same way that, name an influential creator. If they said that, it might be the case. And so what we use is we have Twitter where we'll tweet out, and we have Discord where we will send a notification to everyone through a server. We will do teasers on community tab, but we don't post a video on the community tab because it's kind of redundant since it's already on YouTube. That's the main, those are the main ones. But it's, your hardcore fans, that's who's in the Twitter, that's who's in the Discord. They're going to know when you post anyway, because their friends are all going to know, because they're in those circles.
Yep.
So it's like notifying them doesn't even necessarily do much, but we still do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, you have your rock star fans. I'd say probably 1% of someone's channel are going to be rock star fans that are high engagers. And it's important to reinforce that behavior, So I think for you guys, you've created a community. You mentioned Discord. A lot of channels don't have Discord. A lot of channels, in some ways the community can feel a bit siloed because it's just commenting on their YouTube video, or it's just you follow the personality and that's it. You don't really know anyone who also follows that particular channel. So I think you kind of mentioned something there, which is find ways to bring your community together so that they can connect with each other and can build relationships, and so that, you know, they're primed and they're used to this form of communication. So anytime you have an update for them, they're trained to check it out and to be aware.
Oh no, absolutely. And you know, a fun little story too is like in our Discord. I'll go ahead and even give him a shout out. His channel or his handle is called Hey It's Butter YT or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he is so great because it's like someone could come into the Discord and be trying to cause trouble for I don't know why, or I don't know what their points are, but they're criticizing us for some reason, or they just love drama, right? And there's always going to be people like that, and they're making this whole big deal. And he will go because he's a moderator in there, because we noticed he was just one of those super fans, and we said like, we'll make you moderator because we know he has our best interest in mind. He wants to see us succeed. And so he'll delete those comments and he'll remove people from there and stuff. It's like, I don't even have to hear about that, or and it'll send you like a little update. And it's like, oh, that's nice. Otherwise it's our problem, but he wants to help because he's a fan.
100 true fans. They say, I think a lot of people misconfuse that. They think they look at a subscriber number. Someone could have 1 million subscribers and get 1,000 views each video because maybe, there's a variety of reasons that can happen. But I think it's really important, if you have 100 true fans who tune into every single video and comment on every single video, that level of engagement will set you up for success. So, and that's awesome that you knew this person by their name, because I think that means a lot to community too, is that they feel acknowledged, and that, there's so many YouTubers who don't respond to the comments. Like, when I say this, I mean small YouTubers, right? Like, you get 2 comments on a video, you should probably be responding to those.
Definitely.
When you have hundreds of thousands of comments, it's understandable. But I mean, man, it's like when the few people who are watching you, I really think it's important to let them know that you appreciate their watch, their listen, because ultimately, as you know, YouTube has millions of content creators. So does Instagram, so does TikTok. And so it's, it's all about making sure how to reinforce the people who did watch your content so that they come back for your next upload.
And something I'll add too, and this is something that you'll find, maybe not right now, but like 3 years from now, 4 years from now, if you're still doing the same thing, it's like what will happen, and we've had the benefit of this, is you'll have people that sort of grew up watching you, and they are very much on your team. They are huge fans, and then they want to be an animator, and like to them, their dream job is to work for you, and that's kind of an odd thing to think about. But that, like, at least at this point in their life with where they're at, and they might only be 15 years old or 16 or something, and you can only even hire them that much because you get into child labor and other things.
Right.
But even people, actually someone older than me, I had an experience where like they had watched our stuff for so long because we've been around as long as we have, that they really wanted the opportunity to work with us. And the point is, in years past, we had to like try to convince people, like we were paying them. It's not like we were asking them to volunteer, but like getting artists motivated to work for you was like a difficult thing. But by the time we have people that like grew up watching us, when those people try to work for us, they really take the job seriously.
You want to know what's funny? I literally had this conversation with a content creator. This person had, 1 million plus subscribers, and they were asking like, how do you build a team? Because they're a 1-person show. And the first thing I said was reach out to your audience, because those are it doesn't matter. I would take a C plus video editor who's a core fan of the community I've built and knows the content, than an A plus person who maybe sees it as a transaction. You want the people who are team players. And I think that that's such a great point is, if you ever post an internship or a job, like why not send it out to your community and let them know, because chances are there's probably someone who's going to be interested, who's right for the position.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that you'll have people clamoring to be your editor someday if they aren't already, but they will want to be. And those people, I don't know who does it now, if you do it, but whoever you hire, they'll be better than them. Not to get your editor fired. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. No, I think, it's like going back to the earlier piece, it's also important to start small and grow big over time. When you guys first started, you guys probably didn't have near the amount of expensive equipment or technology or tools to animate. And so one thing I would say, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is just the concept of, it's okay where you're at, be okay with where you are, and realize that things improve over time. Take a look at Mr. Beast, take a look at any channel, and, do an exercise, go to their first upload ever,
Absolutely.
check it
Yeah.
out, and just put
No.
things in perspective.
Well, and you can do this for any major company too. Go look at what's it called, like Steamboat Willie, the Mickey Mouse cartoons from the 1920s. They're not impressive. I mean,
Mhm.
they're still better than I could do, I guess. But like in terms of typical animators, they're not impressive. What they do now is way better. Well, now they're a multi-billion-dollar company, multinational billion-dollar company. So it's like, of course, it goes up over time. And yeah, the same thing could be true. It's like the computer my brother started on was like a I couldn't even tell you the specs because they were not impressive at all. And you need good specs to be able to like render things. So if you're using like a GPU render engine, you
Yeah.
need some great graphics cards. The computer he uses now, and this took years to get to this point, but the computer he uses now, which we're considering upgrading actually, but it has 4 1080 Ti's or something like that in it. And that's, but you know, and it's so important because whenever no one else's computers can handle it, we always have a place where we can take these super dense files, these heavy
Yep.
files for whatever reason, and we can solve the problem, get it rendered, move on. You know, but if no one had a powerful computer, you couldn't do that. But part of that means, to your point of like, so if you're an animator that doesn't have access to this great computer, it's like, well, then you probably can't do a fire simulation or a water simulation or some of these things. That's okay. Just write the projects that you don't have to do a water simulation. And if you really want to do it, just write it down somewhere in a notebook and come back to it later on. You can, or just, you know, store it in your brain, but you can always come back to things later too.
Such a great point, right? Like you can't, for example, a podcast, you can't start a podcast interviewing the, you know, number one most requested person interview. You start with people who are willing and receptive to the idea. And it's very much the same thing with starting any type of channel, is figure out what you can do. Don't focus on, you know, keep the aspirational goals in mind, but focus on what you can actually execute on. And I think one thing I'm curious about though, is sometimes there's a, you know, we talk about work output and results, and a lot of people might be saying, Zach, like I put out a video every single day, I'm not seeing the results. You mentioned earlier that quantity is everything, and I'm not seeing the results. And I took a look at your channel. I saw a video titled What that has 2 million views and is 8 seconds long, which I watched before this, by the way. And there are people that are going to be confused about, you know, sometimes a video just explodes and there's not really a clear reason as to why. I'm sure you guys have experienced virality a few different times, like Survive the Night. That was your first viral video, I believe. It's now at like 60 million views, but 5 years ago, that must have been crazy. So, you know, I guess I'm curious what your thoughts are to those people who are wondering, like, hey, sometimes my output doesn't match the results I'm getting.
Yeah, you know, I'll get to that. I'll address the What video first. You brought it up by name.
Yeah.
That video was just like, again, videos my brother thought was funny that he made with his friends. Once we made Survive the Night, that video and all the other videos, what was interesting, prior to releasing the first successful project, the views on all the other ones went up because everyone's like, I like this video. What else have they made? And that's essentially the same way you like this product from Rand. What else did they make? And you look backwards, and that's what happened, and that's why that video ever did well at all. But so that's a specific case. If we made that now, I don't think it would do as well. But anyway, so like, yeah, and it is a very frustrating thing, you know, and you have to think about it. It's like, here's the thing. And this is the problem with media in general and products in general. But it's like, from a certain point of view, if you paid me $10,000 to make an animation for you of some kind, it's like, that's kind of nice because I can just have a budget and say to the artist, like, okay, you can just, you know, I'm going to spend $2,000 to pay you guys to do this, and I'm going to pocket $8, let's say.
Yep.
And we do it. It turns out great. You like it. Whether or not it helps your brand or not is not our problem. We did our part. That's nice. The thing is, with YouTube, it doesn't work that way. It's like you can do everything right. You can work as hard as possible, and then you post it, and it just doesn't work. And we've had that happen a lot of times. And sometimes those videos will kind of do well over time. That does happen. You know, typically, if nothing else, in our case, they kind of do okay over time. Some will do great instantly, others won't. And some will, you know, 1 million views isn't, and maybe they think I'm just crazy because, well, you know, they all have 1 million views. It's like 1 million views is not, I don't consider that a successful project for us because we spend, for us, that's like 1 million views typically equates to about $1,000. We're not in Google Preferred. We don't have a personal representative. We don't have some of the luxuries. Now, I mean, if there's an attached sponsorship, well, then it could be 10 times more than that. But they don't all have that. And the ones that don't do well, we lose money on those projects. Not everything is going to be successful.
Right. It's also easy to compare yourself and see the next channel and see what they're doing, or look at similar channels in your own niche and get confused. But I think it's so important to also remember that every video you make gives you another shot. And so at the end of the day, even if your success isn't changing, the probability rate of success grows over time. Have you guys ever had a video that randomly exploded later on?
I can't say that we have. Not like I've seen it happen on Examination. Actually, they had a video that they called, it was called Pigman Dan. It was about these nether mob creatures, and I think it came out and it got like maybe 1 or 2 million views, and it kind of just plateaued and flatlined. And then another 6 months later, for whatever reason, I think they made some more popular videos. Then that one started to jump up. Actually, no. Here's an example of this. We in 2016, almost exactly 4 years ago. 4 years and minus 10 days ago, we made a video called Below the Surface. When it came out, it was just this Five Nights at Freddy's animation, not to a super well-known song. It got 900,000 views, and that was it. And it was not climbing from then. We actually had a very, very unsuccessful 2016 year in general. 2017, 18, 19 have been better, and 20. But 2016 was a hard year, and then it didn't do well. And part of it was just because the channel wasn't trending upward, even though it was a good video. Then the next project was the one I already talked about, called Join Us for a Bite, and that went on to get 100 million views. Below the Surface now has like 10 or 11 million, and it was totally stuck. It couldn't even hit 1 million. And what happened was the channel started to trend upward again because we had a viral video, and it bumped the other one up later on. So that can happen.
And that's the importance of creating similar content. A lot of people have playlists I recommend, like, just find ways to extend the watch time of people who might be able to see one video and then go into another one in your channel. But I think a lot of people will be hearing this and they're going to be like, 900,000, like that's incredibly high. I'm lucky a video is viral for me if it gets 105 views, but one thing is it's all relative. It's all proportional, performance is going to be different for everyone. But I think that one thing every YouTuber can relate to is the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs, the highs and lows of being a YouTuber. And you release one video and then you're like, it crushes it. You release your next and it does 1/10 of the performance. And you're like, what's going on? Have you guys ever had any doubts in the channel, or have you guys had any times where things were tough? I guess, just challenges that you like really, it took some time to overcome, or whether it's a mental challenge in terms of confidence in the channel, or it's a logistical challenge, right? Like getting your artists working together. What were some of those moments like?
They aren't fun, and absolutely we've had those. Like, here's an example. Our biggest video is called Build Our Machine, and it's went on to get 140 million views. That's unusual. Like, Mr. Beast doesn't have a video that big, right? If we want to, just for comparison, it's like a lot of channels don't have videos that big. That's excessively big. And so we have one like that. And so I'm not kidding. Right before we made that video, we were this close to just saying, you know what, it's too hard to do animation on YouTube. This isn't going to work. It's never going to work. The success it's just what happens. It takes you so long to make a video. So it's like you make it and the channel spikes up, but then by the time you make another one, it's going back down, and it goes back up, then it goes back. It's just like a permanent oscillation. It doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere.
Yep.
And so we were so fed up with that, so tired of doing animation on this platform. We said, you know what? There are people that can go and make these like 3D video games that aren't even super complex. Like, there are ones that are so simple, and they will become millionaires off of these super simple, basic things. Like, you don't even, it's ridiculous how simple some of these games are. They're not even very good. Maybe they have a good gimmick though, right? And it's like, it's like, why not take our skills to game development where you sell a product? What are we selling? And that's something to really think about. And that's actually the direction we're going. We're very much keeping the YouTube game going. But really what we're doing, in a way, we're actually retiring EnchantedMob videos. EnchantedMob's still going to upload. But by bringing Examination sort of like onto the same team as us, really what we're doing is Examination's going to make one video, then it's going to upload that one on both EnchantedMob and Examination. We have various deals for how the money works out with that. And then they make another one that's just Examination. And they go back and do one that goes on both. And then they go back. And what that does is it's freeing up Seth's time and my time. So then we're going to essentially focus on using the skills we develop on more lucrative markets while maintaining the YouTube game. YouTube is profitable for us. I'm not saying it isn't, but at the same time, at some point you do want to branch out. And animation on YouTube is a difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing to do. And you might have so much success the way that like a lot of podcast channels do, because they don't have that fundamental problem of quantity and quality that we deal with every single day, and we will always deal with on this platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also there's another thing that goes into channels, right? Because not a lot of people, some people are truly not driven by the money. They're truly driven by either building a community, right? So for us, there is such a value of, seeing, improving the overall education, of the community, for people to learn from success stories like yourself and like Seth's, and to take that insight and to take some of the things that you learned along the way, or any advice, even a lot of the tips that you guys have talked about, you mentioned today, and to apply that to their own channel and their own success. And I think that there's also got to be that intrinsic, because anytime someone just goes into something for money, I feel like it can have an adverse effect where the again, it's like, we talk about the authenticity. It's so important to make sure that your message is sincere. And so, I think that those are such great points that you bring up, and it's always going to be a challenge, because at the end of the day, right, like someone might want to be doing something to grow community, but at the same time, that someday there has to be a paycheck that comes in. And so it's either going to be from a full 9 to 5, or they're going to work towards finding a way to monetizing that project. And that's where these platforms like YouTube and TikTok, they've made that possible for people to actually have a full-time life doing something that's specific and unique to them. I think that's, it's a lot of the things you mentioned today, I think are really going to influence a lot of future creators. So one last question I have for you, Zach, is, what do you think is the future for EnchantedMob and for your company overall?
The future for us is to continue to find ways to maximize every single dollar that can come in from the operation we currently have. That's really, like, if I could summarize my job, is just to find ways to, you have one video, now you realize you can upload it twice, you can double monetize it, you can put sponsorships on it, you can have a second channel that does a bunch of different kind of things. You could sell the rights to other similar content creators for them to dual upload it with you. And those are all things we're doing and exploring, that back in the day on something like Survive the Night or Join Us for a Bite, all we did was upload one video. Now all the other videos combined will easily match that one video's views and then some. So you can make things twice as lucrative, 3 times as lucrative. That's part of how you survive in this particular market. But for us, it's making sure we do the YouTube game as smart as possible, but at the same time, getting into other more lucrative mediums, whether that's, and they typically just involve selling products, and that non-inventory products are great, where it's a digital product of some kind. Like
Right.
There's no more lucrative business than that. And so for us, it will be developing a 3D game that will be unlike anything we've ever produced before. It won't look like it's from us. We might not even associate it. It might be a different brand altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just, like as of 2 days ago or 3 days ago, that's the next thing that we're working on. We'll see how that goes. Ideally, if that were to be successful, we would use some of that money to produce original style short films, at least 1 or 2, and we would actually go the traditional Hollywood approach, and we would enter those into film festivals. And there's some here in St. Louis, and there's other film festivals, obviously in California and all around the world. Venice Film Festival, you name it. Not that we're going to win, but we would try, and we'll enter it into those, and you never know. The idea too can always be that there are studios. You mentioned, like, does somebody like Netflix reach out to us, or Amazon Prime? Not really. And we think that big companies don't really, they don't really view YouTube as anything more than advertising. They don't take YouTube that seriously, in my opinion. But when you compete with them on their turf, they can see your short film competing and holding up alongside other short films that are being produced by other people. That will start to have, you're on their turf, and so that's the direction we're going in. And then you never know, like if a streaming service or something wanted to contract us, and we could make them even just one video of something or multiple episodes or anything. That's where you get into the $1 million budgets. And just to give you an example, I'm not saying that our quality is as high as Pixar's, but here's an example for you in terms of the budget difference. Pixar has $200 million budget for their movies.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to divide that down, that's for an hour and a half feature film normally. If it was just 3.5 minutes, which is about what we do, they would have a $6 million budget for their YouTube video. Ours are like a couple thousand. I'm not saying ours are as good as theirs, but I'm saying the quality gap does not match the budget gap.
Sounds like that could be an entire business model right there, is like, you know, short film or short form content for businesses or whatnot. I mean, you know, what I take away from this interview is don't just try one thing, you know, go in multiple lanes, diversify, look for similar opportunities within your category or see what other people are doing, collaborate with other channels. So really, really awesome stuff. Again, thanks so much for your time, Zach. We're going to be dropping all the social media links to EnchantedMob and some of your other channels below. So guys, for watching this, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, check out some of these awesome videos that the EnchantedMob team has come up with. Just really shows you that animation, you know, there's plenty of animators out there that may not be in mainstream types of media content. So thank you so much again for your time, Zach, and hopefully in a year or so we can connect again and talk about some of the updates that that you guys have been up to since this conversation.
Great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your time as well.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure to subscribe and ring that bell to stay notified on future That Viral Moment videos, where we interview popular content creators and help them share their story so that you can learn how to grow your own channel.